Welcome to Noble Warrior Life. This is the place where we talk about what it takes to build purpose-driven organizations. We're going to talk about mindset. We're going to talk about mental models. We're going to talk about actionable tactics. And as you know me well enough, I am not afraid to pause and recap something that's important. All right. So I'm really excited to have my friend Safir with us today. He is the director of advanced digital creation at VFC, which is the parent company of Vans, North Face, Dickies, and so forth. So he's an expert in 3D design, prototyping tools, and on entrepreneurship, which means to be an entrepreneur within an existing organization, as well as he's also a lecturer, a teacher in teaching disruptive thinking to future generations of product designers. So I'm really excited to talk to him about a variety of different topics that he's with us today. Welcome to the show, Safir. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, CK. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast.
Yeah. So you and I, we are part of this mastermind group where a group of innovators come together, really tackling both these challenges as well as the opportunities COVID-19 brought to us. So I want to talk to you at some point about tackling this challenge at this time. How do we accelerate innovation quickly? But before we get there, I want to first ask you about capoeira. So when I was doing some research about you on YouTube, I had no idea you're a student, a fan of capoeira. So tell us about capoeira.
Well, capoeira is an art form that I connected with very late in my life. I think I was 32 when I started, but when I started, I immediately fell in love with it. And this art form brings me so much beyond just exercise and fitness. You know, the capoeira community is an amazing community. It's a family. There's a deep connection between the individuals and also between the individuals and the art form. The art form was, has some roots in Africa and through the slaves that were brought to South America and Brazil specifically. So that, being half Moroccan, I definitely connected with that aspect of things. But also the values and the approach to training, perfecting ourselves, perfecting the art of the conversation. It's not about fighting each other. It's about creating a conversation between two players in the context of a roda, in the context of a circle. So there's a very deep spiritual aspect of this, not in the traditional way, but it's an art form that grounds you, that also brings the best of you. It's to a certain degree, it's a way for you to give in to your instincts and kind of shut off your prefrontal cortex sometimes.
I love it. So 32 until, how old are you now? How long have you been practicing?
In 14 years. I had
14 years.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a break when our twin girls were born. I paused a lot of the things that I was doing, but I came back a few years ago, and I'm definitely invested in the art form.
I love it. So capoeira to me, so I'm a martial artist as well. And as you can tell from the title of Noble Warrior, we talked about martial arts quite a lot. I personally believe that the physicality aspect of it activate the mentality, the emotionality, and the spirituality as well. So they're all superpositioned on top of each other. And the physicality is the fastest way to activate any kind of hidden gifts that's within us. So I love the fact that you talked about a few points. You talked about the spirituality aspect of it. You talked about language, communication, right? This is a way of communicating with one another. So one thing you didn't say though is element of play in capoeira. Most martial arts are very intense and very competitive, whereas to me, capoeira is about communication, it's about play. So what would you say to that?
Would you agree? We stay when we practice capoeira, and when two capoeiristas are in the circle in the hall that we say play capoeira. We don't talk about fight. We don't talk about performance, but it's really it's a playful yet very intense. There are different capoeira games. There are different ways to play capoeira. There are more physical games. There are more acrobatic ways. There are more slow and with a focus on flow. But I think it's an important point to really hone in on the fact that it's the element of play and understanding how you can augment and elevate the conversation between two capoeiristas.
And I want to hone in on the word that you use, which is flow, and also play a bit. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, the guy who wrote the book, the Bible around flow, talks about when you're in the flow zone, it feels a lot like play, but it's also dangerous. It's precarious as well. So as someone who is an innovator and someone who is also a martial artist, how do you feel these two concepts coincide with each other? Flow and play.
Interesting. I think when you think of something as play, the barriers, you overcome the barriers and the mental blocks that you might have around something. It takes away the fear. It takes the fear of failure because when you play, you don't fail. Right? There's no failure in play. You also access a different state of mind when you think about the moment. You think about you're fully present, and I think that's a big component of the in the theme of flow. And you also, it changes the way you actually approach the situation in front of you. It's you're less mentally inhibited, and you open yourself up to possibilities that maybe you weren't aware you had in front of you.
So someone who not only runs teams of innovators as well as teaching students the art of innovation as well, are there sort of rituals or tactics or practices that you use to put people in that psychological safety position where they can actually say, hey, it's serious, at the same time we're here to play as well? Is there any kind of tricks that you've used to help people get into the right mindset, to get into a state of play?
If I do, maybe I don't do it consciously. But I think an important component of this is to always connect with the person behind the title, the person behind the position, the role. We're all human beings. Nobody's perfect. We have our strengths and our weaknesses. And being able to tap into the strength of the individual as opposed to, focusing on their position in society, their position in an organization, I think brings out a lot. It also allows us to connect at a much deeper level and really understand when somebody reacts a certain way. You understand the underlying reasons why this is happening. And I think in every relationship, whether it's professional, whether it's educational, or whether it's personal, I try to connect with the individual. I try to connect with the person and see how we can build bridges. Because I think it's those bridges. It's that I like to speak about that, the space in between. This is where the biggest opportunities are. Whether it's organizations, technologies, people. The space in between is the one that I believe has the most opportunities, and you see that in when you build bridges, when you connect with others, when you connect people who maybe didn't know each other but share values. I think that has a big role to play in the success of any endeavor.
Why don't you say more about that in between spaces? I would say you also had mentioned that in one of the talks you gave. I saw that I believe it was something like IDS meetings or something like that. I'm curious to know, can you elaborate what you mean by the in between spaces?
So that construct came to me pretty early. I was born to a Moroccan father and a German mother, so throughout my life, I've been in between two cultures. When we were at school, When I was in Morocco, I was always the German or the European. When I was in Europe, I was always considered to be the Moroccan. Also, in my education, I have a mechanical engineering degree. I also have an industrial design degree, and from the battles that I witness inside my head every day, between my scientific, my engineering brain and my artistic side, it's a very interesting conversation that leads to sometimes a lot of frustration, but also sometimes some fascinating outcomes. So I've always found myself in this space in between and seeking that space in between. And it's also the realization that I'm not the best engineer out there. I'm not the smartest guy, in my circle. I'm not the best designer, right? But being able to find the connections between opportunities, between tools, between people, and activate those connections, I think it is what has the potential of bringing some really powerful outcomes. It's the same way as you and Karen Solomon connected us, connected this group of innovators. Being able to find ways to bring together people, forces, tools, organizations that can actually work together and tackle a challenge together, I think is what to me has the biggest potential out there. And so that's the space in between, the connectivity that I'm eager to develop.
So let me hear you correctly. The way you think about it is, how do we connect different resources? How do we bridge between different resources? By bridging, kind of thinking about computer science network effect, you are effectively increasing the value, quote unquote, of the entire network by just creating different connections. Is that an accurate mental model, what I recreate?
And to go back to the capoeira example, building the synergy, there's this compounded effect of what the two capoeiristas are doing in the hall, that conversation that is happening, but also the energy, what we call the ashe, the energy that's created by the participants outside, being able to create that connection and activate that synergy so that the end effect is much more powerful than what every individual can activate, is something that I think is really, really powerful.
I love that. Namely because you go from a very conceptual idea of bridging nodes to now capoeira. Now I'm visualizing two capoeiristas in the middle, and then you have a crowd of people. So if you can bring that to someone who's listening to this right now, how can they go and, right, so you have a single note, a single person with some interesting ideas, let's say, and how can this person...
Oh, sorry, I think I lost you.
Sure.
How can you go from the node, the single person, to...
Yeah, so a single person heard you, inspired by this idea. Can you give us some tactical ways to go on and activate this hidden energy, hidden resource, hidden flow? If you think about a very Taoist point of view, flow is a body being stagnant is dead, right? But when a body is flowing, now you're creating life into this. So how do you tactically create new ideas and new flow by connecting different cohorts of people together?
I think from a personal point of view, the most important thing and the starting point is really to find your tribe. Find people who share the same values, not necessarily people who have the same background as you, people who are similar to you, but at least share the same values, and be a connector. You're a connector. I like to connect good people also, and identify people who can actually bring something to the conversation. And you have, you talk about flow. Flow is about energy, right? You have to feel there's something immaterial that happens when a connection clicks. When two people feel that there's something beyond just the physicality of being next to each other or talking to each other, that's pretty powerful. So I think if you're able to find your tribe and be able to create a way for that tribe to come together, you can then start, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with your professional situation. It could be connecting about a passion, connecting about a hobby, or about family, or things like that. But I think, if you're able to do that, the power of networks, I think, is extremely powerful. And the power of networks, we see a lot of the dark side of the power of networks. The way, not to bring it back to the crisis we're currently living, but the way the virus has been propagating in an exponential way, is showing us the dark side of networks. But there's obviously a very positive side here, and this power of networks. And I'm not even talking about social networks, but those help. Those are platforms that help. But just being able to connect, and connect about a specific topic, and maybe work together to tackle this specific challenge. Whether it's local, it's personal, it's helping one of the people in the group, or it is societal or humanitarian. I think there's an amazing opportunity to come together, and each play our part, and each contribute to this force that's going to take on this challenge.
Thank you. Well, I do want to drill in on that a little bit more, because let's say, again, I'm inspired by this idea. I want to connect. I want to find my tribe, but there's so many different modalities, so many different zones or sphere of influence I can start. As you said, I can start from the personal to the family level, to the social level, to a hobby level, to a societal level, to a global level. There's so many different paths that I can pick, right? There's so many different social platforms that I can pick from the known social network to the unknown, or strangers, right? The Reddits, the Twitters, like all of that. So there's an entire space of different possibilities. Do you have a rubric as a way to say, hey, think about this, this, and this, to pick the most optimal ways to find your tribe?
I think it starts with sharing your thoughts, sharing your passion, voicing. Get your voice out there, get your message out there. Each and every one of us has a personal message, a personal vision, and it's important. If you keep it to yourself, nobody will know what you're about. And I've found, I've been, in my professional role, I've been asked to speak, in several conferences and share my thoughts. I would get the most out of a conference, not by attending the conference and seeing what everyone else sees, sitting down and hearing what everyone hears. But I got the most out of conferences by stepping up and talking about something, presenting something. Realizing that I'm not the subject matter expert. There are people who know a lot more than I do. But maybe these people are not there right now, and so whatever I can share, I'm more than happy to share. And what that has resulted in is people coming to me and sharing similar thoughts, similar concerns, sometimes even sharing opposing opinions. That's absolutely okay. But putting your voice out there invites people into your point of view, into your space. And that's a good starting point, because then you can, you're effectively building your own tribe like this. Not that you're an evangelist, or someone who's starting a new sect, but it's just putting your values out there and inviting others to connect with you. So I think that's tactically speaking, that's a good approach. And then being open to seeing what comes out there.
Thank you. I think you describe the impetus of Noble Warrior Podcasts perfectly. When I was trained academically, my thought was, I won't share my voice until it's perfect. But that perfection is so elusive, you never get there. And at some point, I just give up.
Yeah.
But my friend reminded me to say, hey, CK, you don't need to be the guy with all of the answers, the monk from the mountaintop with all of the answers. You can be the documentarian of your own journey. And you just share, one, your curiosity, and then two, talk to other people who maybe your teacher, maybe a peer, maybe a student, and then those are aligned with your curiosity, your affinity for intellectual questions, they will follow behind you. So my personal transformation in all of this, in starting Noble Warrior Life, is that no longer I'm about achieving an outcome, a massive amount of audience. Obviously, I appreciate that, but my payoff right now is happening right here. It's the connection with my guest, and so thank you for capturing everything that my personal journey.
Thank you for making it happen.
Yeah. Okay, so share my voice, starting a podcast, right? Interview interesting people. Anything else about creating and unleashing the power of the network? What's next?
So once you've created your tribe, I think it's important to be able to identify how to best connect and how to drive certain outcomes out of this. Very often groups are formed but nothing really comes out of it. So setting an intention is very, very important. Why am I reaching out to you right now? And you did that very well when we first talked about this podcast. It's part of your questions. What is your intention coming out of this experience? And being very clear about what the desired outcome is, and not being afraid of starting small. You can aim high, but start small. Because if you think too much about where ideally you want to land, you might get disappointed because it will take time to get there. Not everything will come as quickly. So starting small, being okay with failing. This is another thing that we teach in our product innovation class, product design class. Part of the design thinking approach is about making sure you give yourself the space to fail fast, fail often, but put something out there. Get feedback and improve. It's also the idea of Kaizen. It's the idea of not overthinking the result that you're trying to achieve, but continuously improve what you bring, and ultimately, making sure you're very clear about where you want to be. So once you activate your tribe and everyone understands why they're there and what they can contribute, I think it makes the conversation a lot more productive. And it's actionable, and it's also purpose oriented. The purpose, I think, is what inspires people. A higher purpose, a noble purpose will activate people who have the same values.
Can you define that word purpose for us? Because purpose is a meta description of something, right? And it could mean something different for me versus for you. So for you, what's purpose for you?
So that's a loaded question right there. There's a lot of.
Thank you. I'm really, really good at asking loaded questions. Please.
So for me personally, I'll share my personal interpretation of this. It's an underlying thread, an underlying narrative that inspires you day in, day out. It's something that that drives every action, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, and it's the desire coupled with the desire or the intention coupled with the effort that will ultimately allow you to put all your initiatives, all your endeavors, align them all towards a single outcome. That outcome can be very focused. It can be also pretty broad, but as long as it activates all your internal framework, but also all your individual actions, and aligns them all, I think that's when you've created a purpose for yourself, and that's when you're actually able to define it and share it with others.
Thank you for that. The way I teach my audience on my podcast, I tell them like purpose is your North Star. It's the guiding force, right? Different language to your point, but very similar in that way. And you don't need to find it. You already do it. You just need to clarify it. You need to language it, what it is that you already do. And you also know when you're not on purpose, when you go off track, is when you holistically feel within your body something's off. There's a little irritation, or there's a little bit of a void, right? Something that's off. And then you can bring it back to your own purpose, whatever that is for you, right? Then you feel so much better.
Yeah.
Thank you
Absolutely.
for sharing. Appreciate that. When did you crystallize your purpose?
I was asked the question a number of years ago, I think. So let me start with this. About in 2010, I had been working, for Vans for a number of years, and there were I was taking on a lot of challenges that I believed were worthy, and I was seeing that I was making an impact. I created an internship program and understood the power of giving students, giving younger generations a chance, helping them along the way. So that became very quickly one of my guiding forces. But I understood that this might be just a component of a much bigger vision that was taking time to crystallize itself. I also understood very quickly, being a designer, being a problem solver, that, as an individual, my impact was very limited. But as a network and as a tribe of designers, our common and our joint creative problem solving skills would be an amazing force that could take on big challenges. Again, those can be societal, those could be humanitarian. And in 2010, after the earthquake in Haiti happened, a couple of weeks afterwards, my brother-in-law was in Haiti, was part of the emergency response team, which was being sent there. I called him up one day. I said, "Is it okay if I come for a week? I have time off. I need to take time off, but I want to better understand what it takes to solve problems in the context of a natural disaster and of a catastrophe. This is something that I'd always, I'd seen, natural disasters happen every year. They happen everywhere. We see it. This is a good example. This is a situation that we live in right now. And I understood that, you could try to find solutions in the comfortable setting of your studio and, from sipping on a nice latte. But until you go and see things firsthand, you have no idea. And that's the principle of empathy that kind of is the basis of design thinking and human-centered design. So I decided to spend a week. I flew down there. The flights were super cheap because nobody was going there. But I went there with my cameras, and I decided to document. I decided to document every day the different aspects of the relief efforts. And I connected with one of the friends of the response team, who agreed to drive me around and show me all the aspects of this. We still communicate 10 years later. And so he took me around, and I documented the aspects of, obviously, the damage, the people, the shelters, because shelter was obviously a huge component of this. The aid, I sat in daily meetings at the UN compound, and I was able to really see how well they were actually organizing and coordinating the efforts. And so I was able during that week to put together a photo essay that I thought would be a good example or a good resource for designers who want to design solutions, whether it's for shelter or for sanitation or things like that. And obviously, this is one type of natural disasters, natural disaster. It's one type of response, but I think if we could do the same for a number of different occurrences, we'd get a better understanding of what we're designing for. And that's when it occurred to me that, the combination of this approach and the connectivity that I have with students and other designers created an opportunity to leverage, help leverage our common creative problem solving skills to take on some of these big challenges. And we had, I was really inspired by Cameron Sinclair. We organized a call with my USC class this past week, a few days ago, where he talked about all the amazing work that he's done in the humanitarian and specifically in the shelter space. And I think and what's great is that I was able to in the context of the classes that I teach, the classes that I taught at Art Center, specifically a few years back, one of them being, the prompt was very simple. The prompt was displaced. And I was co-teaching the class, and we let the students interpret displacement the way they felt was the more powerful. Some students took on the topic of emotional displacement of children who were adopted, who went from foster family to foster family. Some students took on the displacement of communities because of rising water. Some of them obviously took on the IDP, the internally displaced people, as their target user. But I understood there that it was a great opportunity to enlist these students in, both teach them, but at the same time, let them participate in an effort to come up with solutions to big challenges. And so this is how slowly I was able to understand that this is actually something that needed to be developed. And this is also what led me to teach two classes this year, one at Art Center, this semester, one at Art Center, one at USC. And, teach them the tools to be more responsible creators, give them access and expose them to new digital platforms, new digital tools that allow them to build this superpower, build up the superpower and help them, communicate, improve, ideate on the ideas and the concepts that they had. One, to become better designers in the industry that they choose, but also on the side to allow them to maybe apply those skills to bigger purposes.
So over the years, I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of different entrepreneurs. And although the podcast this is going to be podcast number 60-ish, right, around purpose-driven entrepreneurs. And I think the example that you just gave is the perfect illustration of the outliers that I've seen who are the most successful, who are the most out-of-the-box thinkers regarding it. And let me underline a couple of points for you. One is the new entrepreneurs, the designers, the problem solvers, usually what they do is they design from an armchair. Theoretically, let me think about how do I solve this problem? And that's okay. But the most accelerated path that I've seen, the quickest way to get exactly what the customers, the end users need is to go to the source as quickly as possible. So that way you can have a rapid feedback loop. And then also really get an emotional gauge of whether or not the solutions that you've been thinking about is hitting the need. Is that an accurate reflection of what you did?
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful. Second thing that I want to also underline too is you can solve problems from multiple different ways. And there's the left brain approach and the right brain approach. The left brain is all about cerebral. Logically, here's how we solve this problem. Right brain is all about emotional. But the best entrepreneurs, the problem solvers that I've seen is they have a very deep internal awareness of, how to empathize with the problems that these end users or customers or clients face, and then design accordingly based on their need versus just purely a logical solution or a emotional solution, because ultimately people buy emotionally and then rationalize logically. Would you is that a good reflection back on the approach you teach your student?
Absolutely.
So I want to bring us to this time, COVID. A lot of people are furloughed, right? a lot of individual designers, engineers, technologists, roboticists, all kinds of people, right? And they see this, and there's a lot of desire to, I want to help. I may have some set of skills, and I may even assemble a small team. But the challenge that I see is, let's say they come up with the prototype. Does that mean that they need to now go and create a marketplace? Get the source, the funding, source the factory, source the fulfillment to build this whole thing? Or are there more accelerated way to collaborate together to make the prototypes fast, to give it to the end users, to procure the resources necessary from the hospitals or the doctors or wherever?
Yeah.
From your point of view as a systems thinker, do you have any recommendation? Bring it to a specific individual, a group of innovators like our mastermind, right? Come up with, let's say, a snorkel mask hack to build either a filter or a air purifying thing. What should they do?
So this was actually something that very recently has become an opportunity that I did not anticipate would present itself, because I myself was struggling a little bit to find and connect with like-minded people. I obviously have my network, and I've built several tribes around specific topics. But outside of my professional environment, and we have the innovation team at VF really came together and is in the process of coming up with some amazing solutions, and have activated a number of initiatives and things like that. But that would tackle one aspect of the crisis. There were more immediate needs that I think needed to be tackled. And before yourself and Karen connected me with the amazing group that we're now part of, it would have been a little bit more difficult to have an impact, because I don't have all the equipment, all the resources that I needed to be able to execute on some of the ideas that I had. Also, didn't have everything figured out. And I think, so that being said, there are platforms, there are websites out there that attempt to centralize a lot of that information, connect those who need equipment with those who are able to produce. I think one of them that was brought to my attention, I think is really good. It's America Makes. So I think it's a federal resource, a federal website that aims to connect, those who are able to provide support from an advanced manufacturing, 3D printing, additive manufacturing point of view, with entities, individuals who need PPE and beyond. So there are a number of platforms that are up and running that connect people who can help with people who need the help. But in this specific case, the case that you mentioned, one of our doctor friends came to me with a challenge. His colleagues at the hospital where he works in had identified an opportunity to use full-face snorkel masks and connect them with inline HEPA filters, the types that you connect to CPAP machines. But that connection, they could not figure out how to make it a lasting connection that could be clean, that could be durable, and things like that. And so through his wife and my wife, we're able to chat, and then he explained the project to me. And I was very, very quickly, it's a very simple object, it's a very simple product. I was able to design in CAD a connector that would allow them to connect the two components. Because I don't have a 3D printer at home, we have 3D printers at Advanced headquarters in Costa Mesa, but we're not able to go there. I had an idea and I had a CAD file, but I did not have a way to print it. And through the group that we founded, that we call the Mafia for Good, I was able to connect to one person specifically, Kevin Bass, who helped me. He had a 3D printer. Now I think he has a number of 3D printers at home, and we're able to quickly 3D print a prototype And then I gave it to the doctor, and he was able to, the next day he was back at the hospital, tested, give me some feedback, and then now we're in the process of printing a number, I think 250 of them, and at the same time
150?
250, yeah.
That's awesome. That's great. I didn't know that. That's great.
And
Amazing.
this is all thanks to not only Kevin but his connections. And I think this is really a group effort. We each brought not only those who connected the dots, but those who were able to participate a small aspect of the solution. We all came up, and it's something that's making a difference. There are a number of hospitals and frontline workers that need help right now. This is a very small drop in the ocean that we're providing, but by collaborating and making our part, our 3D file available to those who maybe have opportunities to print, local for local, and help out local frontline workers and doctors. We can make small difference in the lives of those who help us. We're not saving lives. We're just preventing those who are actually on the front line, saving lives to get sickle cells, because they have families. They have a life. They're giving everything that they have, and it's absolutely one of the noblest things you can do.
Well, I mean, I want to make a tiny correction there. You said we're not saving life. I beg to differ from my point of view, because the name of the game for this COVID-19 problem is not necessarily symptom relief per se, although very, very important. To me, the most dangerous part is how viral this thing is. Because if you get it, on average, you pass it to 3 people, and then by definition, that's exponential, like super, super quick, right? So this type of preventive measures, to me, actually holds the key to flatten the curve or curb the disease or the viral spread or whatever you call it, is to me the most important thing. So my friend, good work there. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so happy to hear that 250 masks will be made. Yeah.
And you were instrumental in making that happen. So
Yeah.
glad to you.
I appreciate that. So thinking ahead though, let's say, all right, so this is a doable solution. We're hacking an existing product. We don't need to build something brand new from 3D printing or molding or things like that. And it's possible we can also upgrade it to something else. Instead of just a passive filter, we can hook it up with another pump. So now all of a sudden it's an air purifying thing happening just within a system. And we can make it, let's say, $100 versus $1,500, right? So that's a very doable solution. So say that's the direction that this group of innovators, again, we're using this as an example, want to go. Are there ways to their marketplace of ideas or prototypes that you can point whoever's listening to this who aspire to build something similar?
Yeah, there are a number of them, and the group that we're part of has been really good about sharing a lot of these resources. We'll have to find a way to get them to the audience, because I don't know them off the top of my head. But there are resources that people can go. I think one of the most impressive one was I think it's called the Coronavirus Tech Handbook.
Sure.
And it's one of the databases that attempts to bring together all the information, bring together and organize all the information about what's being done, what's being needed, who's doing what, who can help with what. And, right now, again, with the power of networks and the power of digital technologies, we have a lot of access to a lot of data. We have a lot of access to a lot of information, more information that we can process individually. So working together, and I have some friends who are working on a Kaggle project that attempts to use artificial intelligence to parse all that information, extract a lot of the key aspects, helpful aspects. And again, this is a great example of using digital technologies to allow us to react much faster, and because time is of the essence right now. Economies are on a standstill.
Right.
People dying. So time is definitely one of the most commodities, the most important currencies that we're dealing with right now. So being able to parse through all the information and connect, again, we come back to the connectivity, connect those who need and with those who can provide solutions or resources or money or parts or just information, I think is the most important thing you can do right now.
I think one of the biggest challenge as an innovator, whether you're a PhD researcher or you're a roboticist or you're a designer, the biggest challenge is where do I go to meet the right people? Because if I don't meet the right people, I got to build my own infrastructure. And building your own infrastructure, it takes a long time. And a lot of times, building an idea is very fragile. It's like planting a garden. In
Yeah.
the beginning, the sprouts are very, very fragile. So you try to protect it and from the wind and the elements. And then once it gets bigger and bigger, then of course, then you can take everything away. So, so I, so I wanted to actually see if we can help our people concretize that even more. So giving this snorkel mask hack example, you receive a need from the end user, you figure out a way to solve problem with a group of innovators with the solutions that you need. You made a prototype, you brought it back to the end user, get some feedback, and then you continue to grow it out to 250. And then beyond that, possibly, so right now this is a donation, right? Goodwill donation. Do you see possibility to, again, we're using this as a very example for the hospitals to procure, because they do need it for their hospital staff or the neighboring hospitals or the community hospitals, right? Are there ways to match the people with resources and an innovative solution for that?
So I think what's happening, and this might be one of the challenges we face as individuals, but also as a society, is that
Mm,
a lot of these solutions that are being developed right now
yeah.
cannot be certified. There's obviously in the medical world, you can't just create something and use it, and there are strict protocols to be followed to certify specific equipment for use because there are lives at risk, right? And I think
The lives at risk, right? Mm-hmm.
there are lives at risk. And my understanding is that a lot of the hospitals are not able to purchase equipment that is not certified, right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
why it's actually a lot of the doctors and a lot of the frontline workers who are personally buying the
Mm-hmm.
equipment and using it to protect themselves. So this is
Mm-hmm.
something we have to be aware of. But if you think about it, in this environment, a lot of the rules don't apply anymore.
Yeah.
If you have to choose between waiting for FDA certified equipment and
Mm-hmm.
exposing yourself to a risk, and finding something that's actually that you feel really really good, that is gonna it's gonna help. I think we have to act fast,
Mm-hmm.
and just find immediate solutions and maybe see how later we can improve them or certify them and things like that. So that's one of the possible challenges that we're working against. But again, it's the idea of coming up with an idea, testing it in a safe environment, making sure that there are ways, there are studies out there. And I think that the idea of the connector between the snorkel mask and the filter has been around for a few months, and there's an effort. I think there was a study between Stanford and University of Utah that was put together, and they submitted it to the FDA. It's pending, but again, it's a matter of really understanding what can be done now, testing it, and then improving on it. Improving
Mm-hmm.
on it, making sure that you take the right precautions. And again, it's about seeing what's being done and working together to come up with a solution that is as close as something that can be certifiable. And that comes down to being able to see what was done somewhere else at another time. I think Italy, there was one of those designs that was developed in Italy first, and then in the United States too. So, it's not, again, we're not aiming for the perfect solution right here, because that perfect solution will take some time to develop. But we're bridging the gap between what is needed and what is available in this time span.
Yeah. As we were speaking, somehow Steve Jobs, how he calls his people pirates, kind of come to mind. So now's the time to be a pirate. Just get it done.
Yeah,
Cool. So let's see. Let's project forward. Right. There are a lot of different opportunities, not just the PPE designs and supply chain issues, but a post-COVID world is here. Chances are we won't be back to movie theaters, sports arenas, or large conferences in the near future, right? 6 months, a year, maybe. We'll see, right? Things happen like that in terms of psychological safety and as well as vaccine design and all sorts. Anyways, my projection, 6 months to a year, right? So projecting forward, how does it shift? What kind of, because innovation in my mind is like surfing. It's like surfing. You want to paddle where the waves is going, otherwise you're too late. So are there trends that you see as someone who is responsible for innovation for VFC that you use, or that you see right now, and also what's the rubric that you use to identify future opportunities?
yeah. No, I think it's something that I spoke about in another webinar.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about the current situation and where we are, the tectonic plates have shifted dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
Effects of what we're living right now are here and will most likely be permanent. Certain aspects of those effects might be here for a long time, and that might completely change the way we behave as individuals and as societies. And so, given my background in my area of interest professionally, I'm looking at digital technologies, and I'm realizing that our threshold for acceptance of some of these digital tools and platforms has been lowered. All of a sudden,
Has
everyone,
been lower. Is that what you said?
yeah, lowered. Everyone suddenly has become pretty proficient at remote collaboration, running Zoom meetings, running Zoom classes. Everyone from first grade or preschool teachers to college professors, have had to pivot on a dime. And so what's really interesting is that, a lot of these digital technologies are now becoming the only way to maintain continuity between, what we were doing before and how we have to adjust right now. So it's really interesting how this situation has forced a lot of organizations, individuals, even whole countries to think differently and to adapt. This is kind of a fast forward way for us to, it's a crash course basically in digital technologies. Designers,
it's a forcing function, I call it.
It's a what?
Forcing function.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and what's really interesting to me is that access to education is also being made easier. My daughters are taking piano lessons on an app, and they're learning the piano faster than I ever did. I took 11 years I played the piano for 11 years. I know for a fact that I did not learn as fast as they did. I take capoeira classes over Zoom. Things that go ahead.
Why do you think that is? Is it the gamification, the faster feedback loop? Is it just their brains are different, or is it because they're girls? Like, why do you think they learn faster than you did?
I think it has to do with the way the programs are actually built. The gamification definitely helps. The fact that when I studied the piano, I had one class per week. Granted, I had my grandmother who would sit with me every day for an hour or two to practice, but I had feedback once a week. Now with these apps, you have instant feedback, and it's gamified, and the users, the children connect with that, and it stimulates them. So I think, this is a great example of a way of learning that's being disrupted by digital technologies. Granted, piano professor, when this is all said and done, we will take them to piano lessons with a piano teacher. But at the very least, while we're here, while we're all stuck inside, they're learning the basics. They're learning how to learn to read the notes and everything. So I was bringing this up because now that we've almost dematerialized and, for the most part also demonetized a lot of aspects of what we've done, there's a huge opportunity to democratize access to technologies, access to education. There are a number of programs, Ivy League classes that are now available for free online. You can, because now we have figured out a way, which might not be perfect, but we figured out a way to teach remotely. We can now start thinking about what this means to bring knowledge and education to areas of the world that didn't have access to that, And again, it's that space in between. There's opportunities, there's knowledge, and there are places that are hungry for knowledge, hungry for education, but that do not have access to education. So how do we bridge that gap is something that I'm actually really excited about, and we have a project and very active conversations with a tribe, one of the tribes that I'm part of to focus on that.
Yasmin Institute, yeah?
No, not even Yasmin.
No, different one.
They're definitely thought partners, and several of them are part of the conversation. But the Aspen Institute First Movers Fellowship is also one of these platforms and these programs that connect people. Connect like-minded people who share the same values, who are entrepreneurs, innovators in their own organization, who are pretty much dealing with very similar challenges. And so the program, the fellowship, brings them together, and it's been an amazing experience being connected with these thinkers.
Have you seen a good model to support democratization of, let's say, educational content? And I asked this question also specifically. The desire is there, right? However, and also the content is there. However, there's infrastructure costs and cost of hiring the professors. You get what you pay for, so to speak. So the idea of democratizing content is great. Let's say Khan Academy, YouTube has been tremendous there, but the quality varies.
Yeah.
Right. So have you seen a good model where, hey, we can have a sliding scale based on wherever you're located, or some kind of a way, so that way there's still fairness, there's still supportive, synergistic circle from the users to the people providing the service?
So I think what's important to know that is that through digital technologies, and I refer to the 6Ds, the 6D construct that Peter Diamandis has come up with, has developed, and I think it works really well. In the context of education, a lot of the content.
All right, you can't just say 6D construct and fly past that. Can you tell us what 6Ds are?
Okay, so it's if anyone wants to look it up, I think it's pretty powerful. It's the 6Ds of exponential transformation. So it starts with digitized, deceptive or deception, disruptive, demonetized, materialized, and then it ends with democratized. So, I'll give you an example. Because of a single event right now on the other side of the world, our life, our work, and our education have been, I would say, catapulted into this new space. The only way we're connected is through digital technologies, right? And if we didn't have electricity or Wi-Fi or internet, I don't know what we would be doing, but it'd certainly be a little bit more complicated. So the transition started very deceptively, as did the propagation of the virus. If you look at the curve, at the very beginning, it was just a few cases, and then slowly, and then all of a sudden you saw that knee of the curve, right? But it started deceptively slow, but it was global, and it disrupted our day-to-day lives gradually. And then people came together. They came together, they offered up what they had to help others, and this is still happening for free. You see all the mini concerts together at home. Actually, there's a major concert right now that's happening, that's on YouTube. That's going to be going on live for another few hours. But this content has been completely demonetized. Free concerts, free webinars, free classes, free resources, and things like that. And on a more practical level, because we're not all in the same place anymore, we don't work in the same place anymore. Everyone is kind of, in their own space. We're now forced to conduct our business, our classes, in a dematerialized way. The learning apps have replaced school books, so everything is digitalized. The decisions are made using virtual product, and this is definitely true in the apparel and footwear industry that I'm in. A lot more of the decisions are made not on physical samples anymore, but on virtual assets. Even happy hours are now virtual, right? Although the drinks are very real. So, but the last point that I'm really most interested in is that the topic and the theme of democratization. We haven't quite gotten there yet, but access in general, with a big A, will soon be democratized. We're starting to understand the mechanics of this, and we're starting to see the opportunities. But provided you have a computer or a device and internet access, or a vehicle and a smartphone, you can contribute to helping others and to finding solutions. You can have access to the knowledge, the education, and you can also have access to work. Someone in the middle of Central Africa, provided that they have a computer and a good Wi-Fi connection, can learn the skills that can allow them to contribute and can allow them to find work and be part of a virtual team. And so that's why I think that construct is really powerful. But the opportunity and the impact that this is going to have on education, in my opinion, is very, very, very powerful.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of exciting possibilities to come. Have you been to Burning Man, by the way? Just out of curiosity.
I have not. We were going to go last year, but I have not.
Yeah, I mean, as we were talking about the 60s, that actually came to mind. And I wanted to bring that to an example because at Burning Man is demonetized. It's not dematerialized, but it's demonetized, right? So they practice this gratitude-based economy, or gift economy rather. Mm-hmm. So no money is exchanged, and part of the core values is, gifting each other with what you have. And I think that works temporarily during the Burning Man period. Yeah. And people who are in it, they love it, right? And also because we have an abundance of resources. We're prepared for it. We have abundance of resources. It's part of the culture. Have to give it. And then you're kind of a weirdo if you don't have something to give in that broader environment, right? So I think implicitly in everything the 60 that you talked about, the implication of that is we have lots to go around, abundance of resources, talents, gifts, products, and services to go around. Is that a accurate assessment of what you said?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think we're living this right now. We're living a modified version of Burning Man right now because everyone's compelled. Again, all bets are off. Organizations, individuals are all in the mindset of giving and participating and supporting, right? Nobody should be in it right now to make a profit. And so that's what's happening right now. And I think, it brings up a good point, which is, maybe a barter economy might not be, going back to a barter economy might not be that bad, if the value that we attach to a service that can be measured not in a number of or in a specific currency, but in how people can actually contribute and can help with what they have. I think it might be an interesting experiment, and I think we're living this experiment right now.
And I asked I kind of focus on the resource aspect, the monetization aspect of it a bit, because also I know people who are furlough and then they're gifting their time, their service, their expertise, their raw material even out of their goodwill. And at the same time, flip side of it, I also know that psychologically there's a desire for what's next. How do I actually support myself financially? Because I've been furloughed, I've been laid off, things are, oh, my manufacturing job is going away, my restaurant business is going away, my yoga instruction is going away, my movie theater is going, my events business is going away, my retreats business is going away, like that, right? So there's that dichotomy of, yes, I want to give out of my goodwill because that's a decent human thing to do. At the same time, how do I support myself?
Yeah.
And that's why I keep going back to creating a profitable ecosystem. Because in my mind, my core belief is business is good. It's a sustainable mechanism to help things go around. So I don't
And
have something to inquire about.
yeah, and we've seen a shift. Obviously, there are certain industries and organizations that are actually doing better now, you know, and there are those who are on the brink of closing. So I wonder if now is not a good time. And a lot of the big organizations have donated millions of dollars, and it's happening. It's not, you know, big companies are not insensitive to what's happening.
Oh, of course.
Right.
I wasn't implying that at all. Yeah, for
But
sure.
I think it's a good reminder for everyone, to point out that there are real implications, everyday implications of this crisis on families, on individuals that are, trying to figure out how they're going to feed themselves the next day. It's
Yeah.
real. Yeah.
Well, necessity is the mother of invention, right? So that's something that's the reason why we formulated the mastermind group. That's why I want to talk to you about innovation. From my point of view, so in Chinese, crises has two characters. One is danger, the other one opportunity. So I'm focusing on this not just to dwell on the danger part, but necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
So how can we take advantage of this opportunity? Because if you want to build an organization of impact, of wealth, of riches, of influence, this is a really, really good time right now, right? So that's what I wanted to focus on. So curious to know your point of view, Safir. In the apparel industry, it's about you mentioned in one of your talks, you said something about like it's not just the product, it's the brand, and there's two other things that you mentioned.
I,
Sure.
I don't remember.
It's not just the product, it's the brands, it's the story we'll tell, it's the tribes we create. This is the quote that you share on one of your presentations.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about someone, a designer, an engineer, who is, all right, I wanted to help, but it's not just the products. How should I create a movement based on what Safir tell us?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I was saying before about the human connectivity and the people behind the brands, people behind the products, and people behind the roles, right? And we have an amazing opportunity to rethink and reset our values right now. It feels like this crisis right now is something that it's a sign from our planet that's telling us, you know what, I need you all to take a break. Look look back, look inside, look at yourselves, look at how you act, how you live your lives, how you work, and think about how you can do this better, right? So granted, in many industries, people still need things. You know, people need clothing, people need shoes. Although, if you're not going out much right now, that's kind of changing a little bit. So you still need things. You will still need services. You will still need infrastructure, things like that. I think our opportunity right now is to think about how we create those things in a much more responsible way, in a much more efficient way, so that things like this, maybe, these crises will happen. That's inevitable. But maybe the impact of this and our ability to react to these crises might be much better in the future. So becoming, from the point of view of organizations, becoming more agile, doing business in a way that does not put such a hard burden on our resources, on our planet, on our people. Being able to be more nimble, being able to focus on positive stories, bright spots, as opposed to just dwelling on the negative, or on stories that just make the news but don't enrich anybody. I think this is a tremendous opportunity that we're facing, and everyone should spend some time introspectively and think about how they're contributing to society, and how they're contributing to this planet, and how their actions are actually impacting the overall dynamic of our humanity, if you think about it. And I think together we have the opportunity to, if we come together, and if with the right values and the right intent, we honestly commit to improving and rethinking our way of doing things, our way of life, our way of maybe even putting value on success. How we define success, in my opinion, needs to change. It should not be attached to how big your bank account is. These are the things that I think a lot of people are starting to think about, and hopefully this crisis will initiate a sea change and a much needed transition, much needed shift in where we decide to place our values.
Do you have a mental model or a framework to reveal what one's core values are?
I think that's very personal. I'm not sure. I haven't thought about it to that extent. I know that it's something that you will most likely feel. It's very visceral, and with a little bit of introspection, these values will appear to yourself. But I don't necessarily have a mental model. That's a good question, actually. I should probably develop one.
And I asked this question also because it's part of my core beliefs and teaching that we make what we feel and we make what we are. So everything stems from the leadership team on the company level. If they are not clear about who they are and what they stand for, the decisions they make will also be kind of cloudy, right? Mm-hmm. So right now, as we all go through this, whether it's economic or health or physical or emotional challenge that we face, it reveals our true characters based on the decisions we make. We can all watch what companies do based on this greater challenge, this pressure point that they receive. So I was wondering if you have any, again, similar to your advice on a way to, let me pause for a second, see I can ask this question in a better way. For someone who is being furloughed, they're looking to join an organization or get a new job, right, a new position. What kind of selection criteria would you recommend them to look at, to evaluate, to assess these companies during this time?
That's a good question. I think the same way I mentioned that it's good for individuals to put their message out there, voice their values, and express who they are and what they believe in. I think a lot of the organizations that understand the importance of this have found a way to establish who they are, what they believe in, and why, what type of a tribe they want to create, right, internally. What's the culture? A great way to understand this, to get a feel for this, is to talk to people who work for these different organizations, and get a feel for what it is that the organization believes in, and what the purpose is. I was fortunate. I've been with VF for 16 years now, and
A really long time.
yeah,
That's awesome.
I'm dating myself.
Yeah,
But
that's great.
I spent 13 years for the brand, at the Vans brand specifically, and then the last 3-4 years, 3-4 years for the VF innovation inside the VF innovation team, but always connected to the Vans brand, and working from the headquarters. And the value the values that the organization has developed and expressed, and embed in every transaction and every activity, every message, I think is really powerful. And I think it makes a huge difference. I would not be with the organization for this long if that wasn't the case. So I think it's important to make sure that the organization that you're joining shares your values. And the way to do this, to ensure this, is to really do your research, talk to people who have spent some time there, and see what they have to share. You know?
I think part of the challenge with any kind of, well, value-driven marketing or value-driven declaration, whichever way you look at it, is it's how accurate, how true does the organization embody what they say they aspire to achieve, right? So, and a lot of times you got to read between the lines of what these people tell you, what they actually do, and what you actually receive. And I think that's very much a internal awareness that one needs to calibrate with, and bring it back to what you were saying earlier about empathy. It's really important that you have calibrated your own internal awareness such that you can gauge the feedback, the data that you get from whoever you talk to within the organization, and also what the organization put out in the public communication. Is that an accurate way to reflect what you said?
I think yes, and I think also it's a very dangerous game to play, to put out a message that does not truly resonate with who you are as an organization. I think people can see right through that. And again, if just trust your guts and your gut feeling when you're researching, or when you're finding out about a specific organization, because it's in the everyday actions. It's not so much in what the posters say, what the banners say, what the motto says, but it's really in the everyday actions that you see whether the message matches the reality. And I think that the more successful brands have understood that, and are really focusing on this, and putting a lot of importance on this.
Mm. All right. So looking forward, my friend, let me ask a couple more questions, then we'll complete. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So for people who are watching, the designers, the engineers, what opportunities should they tactically do more research on? Because Safir has recommended them to do so. You had talked about democratization of education, anything around the apparel area,
In terms of
opportunities to create a micro brand. Let's say, I'm just throwing out a random example, another Tom Shoes, obviously not, but something like that, or anything that's like, hey, if I were recommending to my daughters, if they're starting a new apparel brand or active sports brand or something like that, I would look at these areas. Anything tactical like that?
Yeah, I would say so. First of all, now is probably the most challenging time and environment to start something in. But in any case, I think one of the most important factors for success is the passion that you as an individual bring to what you do.
Okay.
And again, when I look for candidates, when we hire, I think seeing someone who is incredibly passionate about what they do is a great indicator of their success as a team member.
Mm.
So if you go into and want to create a business, make sure you do so in a space that you're absolutely passionate about, because you're going to spend all-nighters, you're going to sweat blood and tears in the endeavor and in the process of establishing it. And do it for the right reasons. Do it because you have a message to share, you have something to share with others. Don't do it because you want to get rich. Don't do it because you want to be famous. But I think if you focus on what, through your brand, through your service or your product, you can bring others and are deeply passionate about, chances are people will recognize that and will want to support that. And again, it's not about the product. It's not about the product, but it's about what drives the people who contribute to bringing this product to reality, to life. You know, and I think this is again the act of purchasing, signing a check, pressing add to cart, and actually checking out is a deeply emotional act, right? So being able to connect with your audience, speaking to their heart, speaking to their brain too, but what's really going to drive people to act is if they feel emotionally compelled to act and to support in your organization and your business. I think that's, to me, that's probably one of the most important things. And then obviously you need to make sure you know what you're doing, knowing that you're always a student. There's always opportunities to learn. Nobody knows everything. Nobody has all the clues. But if you adopt a growth mindset and realize that you can always get better and you can always learn more, and you surround yourself with people that you believe can help you, chances are that you'll put a lot of the critical factors of success on your side.
Thank you. That actually was going to be my segue question to, are there tactical ways that one could demonstrate leadership during this time of uncertainty within a existing organization or community? So let me do a quick recap to see if you wanted to add anything on top of that. Everything you said is be passionate, be competent, be helpful, share your voice. Anything else beyond that to demonstrate leadership during this time of uncertainty within an organization?
I would say be selfless. You know,
Be selfless.
yeah, it's not about you. It's about the objective. It's about the purpose. Knowing that you are one of the components of the way to get there, but it's not about the individual.
So practically, do you set aside a certain time box, certain time to say, now is the time, this time to this time, I'm going to dedicate to reach out to my network and be as helpful as possible? Is there any practical ways that you use to help people to take certain actions?
Yeah, I think the way I've committed to specific endeavors or specific activities has forced me into that space, right? So obviously during the days, especially now in this crisis, I have to, and we all have to balance, those who have kids have to balance their professional expectations and duties with homeschooling and family time. Everyone does the best they can. But beyond that, my commitment to teaching is something that happens outside of that. I teach at night or in the late afternoon for most of the time. And so that automatically blocks out that time for me. But I wish I could say my calendar was that organized that I had blocks of time. I just end up working late at night and trying to juggle all this as best as I can.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. I don't know if you read the book by Cal Newport. In any case, he had talked about 4 different ways super productive people chunking their time. One is like a monk. Basically, you take a few weeks off to do certain thing. Bill Gates does that. So he would take a few weeks off to just read and go a deep dive. One is the ritualistic, right? So time box out certain time of the day and then ritualize that concurrently. The last one is called journalistic, meaning if they can steal 5 minutes at a time, they'll write something like a journalist, hence the word journalistic. So it sounded to me the way Safir works best is more of a journalistic type approach. Is that accurate?
That could be the case, yeah. One thing that, yeah, one thing that I realize really drives my daily activities is the desire to learn. Always, whenever I have an opportunity, whenever I have a question, make sure that I find the information about it and I develop a point of view about it. It's obviously something that could keep one busy for their whole life and take up most of the time, but I think with access to information these days, you can very quickly learn about a specific topic. So if you choose these topics wisely and you build around that knowledge, your ability to see connections, we're going back to that idea of connections, to connect topics and connect opportunities becomes that more powerful.
Well, thank you, my friend, for being so generous. I acknowledge you for your open heart, your open mind, your willingness to dance with me. Dane calls it a verbal jujitsu, right? Going back and forth with me. So thank you for being that. So for anyone that is motivated, that's inspired by what you're up to around democratizing innovation, democratizing education, democratizing apparel, right? Innovation, where should they follow you?
So I'm these days I've not been very active with everything that I'm juggling. I've not been very active on social media, or at least as much as I have been wanting to. But I have a presence on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and on Twitter. My handle is Safir Bellali everywhere. I kept it very simple. But as I develop a lot more of these initiatives and connect more people, I definitely look forward to being more active and really leveraging those platforms as ways to connect and building my tribe.
Well, my friend, we look forward to you using your voice even more. I think that people can really get inspired by the way that you bridge different resources, to bridge different communities from design to engineering to people on the front line of hospitals and so forth. I think there's lots of opportunities for all of us problem solvers to get in. So thank you so much for being here on Noble Warrior Live.
Thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts. It's been a pleasure.